I'm joined by my colleagues Tabitha Jackson and Sophie Tyerman for the presentation today. So we're just going to be doing, it's basically part one of a two-part series on MHPP and what is wellbeing research at work. So the second part of it will be a bit later in the year. So hopefully we'll talk a bit more about that today. So a bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So to start with, what is MHPP? So what does that mean? A day in the life, so that's going to be a few suggestions about kind of how a day might look with some of the tips and tricks that we would give in our interventions for you to see as well. We've just got a few more people joining. For those of you just joining, if you could have cameras and mics turned off for now, and we will have a bit of a Q&A time later on as well. So yeah, day in the life, and then we're going to do some research FAQs, so just go through a few kind of typical questions that we would get about research and what research really is, and then we're going to do a section on kind of what's next for the project as a whole. So MHPP, what is MHPP? It stands for the Mental Health and Productivity Pilot. It's a 3-year study that's been going on sort of for the last couple of years, and we're just coming towards the end of it now. It's been funded by Midlands Engine, and it's a collaboration of universities and other organisations. So it's led by Coventry University. Us here at the University of Warwick, we're one of the partners, and there are 5 other universities included as well. And there's also Mind, the mental health charity, and the West Midlands Combined Authority as well. So in terms of what we're doing here, what is the project? So we're looking at ways to improve the mental health of workers and employees across the Midlands. So we're bringing together kind of expert knowledge from these various universities and organisations to try and find ways and interventions and things to improve mental health and ultimately kind of reduce stigma and improve productivity in workers as well. So what we have here at the University of Warwick, we have 3 trials running, which are sleep, rest and bite. So the sleep one is insomnia, the rest one is kind of anxiety, depression and stress, and bite is primarily for disordered eating. So I'm joined by my colleagues today. So Sophie, she is a therapist on the sleep trial and helps to do the research for sleep and rest. And Tabitha, who works with me on the bite trial, and we are therapists for eating disorders and help to run that trial and kind of the day-to-day things as well. We do also have the mentor and the pro work trials at sort of other partner organisations, but we won't be touching so much on those today. We'll be mainly focusing on the ones that are here at the University of Warwick. So what I'm going to do now is just hand over to Sophie and Tabitha, and they're going to take you through a bit of a sort of day in the life of the sorts of things that we would recommend within our interventions in kind of a typical working day. So over to you.
Hi everybody, I'm Tabitha, as Aggie said. I'm a therapist working on the bite trial, and yeah, just going to share with you a few, I guess, tips and tricks from all 3 of our trials. So bite, sleep and rest, to help you just start to think about maybe your own well-being at work, and hopefully, yeah, give you a flavour about what participants have been learning through our trials, which are all based on cognitive behavioural therapy. So we're going to start with breakfast at the beginning of your working day. So often breakfast is described as the most important meal of the day, and I think there's kind of a reason for that. So overnight, when you are asleep, your body is working incredibly hard. So it's keeping your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your muscles repairing, and your memories sort of solidifying. And all of that requires quite a lot of energy, which means when we wake up, we actually wake up in an energy deficit. We're depleted of energy and we need replenishing. So how do we replenish our energy in the morning? Well, that's through breakfast. Most importantly, actually, through carbohydrate, because carbohydrate is the body's best source of energy. Therefore, your breakfast is going to need to look like kind of either a bowl of cereal or oats or 2 slices of bread, so toast or a sandwich, and basically any complex carbohydrates. These are really going to sort of boost your energy and mean that you're having the best start to the day, and you're more likely to feel more productive for your working morning. I'm going to hand over to Sophie now, who's going to talk through sort of the next part of the morning.
Can everyone hear me okay? So it's also recommended to keep a regular sleep-wake schedule. So this means waking up and getting out of bed at the same time every morning and going to bed at the same time each night, including weekends. Although there is a common misperception that having a lie-in can help you make up for missed sleep that you may have missed out on during the week, this habit can actually make sleep problems worse. So by sleeping in, you are shifting what is called your circadian rhythm later. So the circadian rhythm helps to keep you alert during the day and allows you to sleep at night. So therefore, when you have an irregular sleeping or waking times, you are retraining your body to shift towards a later wake-up time that is not consistent with your desired sleep routine, and this will only disrupt your sleep even further. So to motivate yourself, particularly if it is an earlier wake-up time in the morning, you could think about planning something ahead of time that you could look forward to. So this could be something like an early catch-up call with a friend, or cooking yourself a nice breakfast, as Tabitha's been talking about, or if it is a working day, setting up early meetings that perhaps you can't be late to. Now, once you are awake and out of bed, we do recommend trying to avoid going back to bed or back to the bedroom until bedtime. So making your bedroom a place just for sleeping or sex can help your body to associate sleep with your bed and the bedroom, which then becomes triggers for falling asleep faster.
So we've talked about waking up and breakfast. So perhaps by now you're a couple of hours into your working day, or maybe it's been sort of 3 hours since breakfast. So it's time for a mid-morning snack. Now it's likely that the energy from your breakfast has been used up whilst you're carrying out your morning tasks. Even if you're just sat at a desk, you're still burning lots of energy, sort of by using your brain, and yeah, you know, your body's still keeping breathing, your heart's still pumping, all that sort of thing. So you're going to be using up that energy from your breakfast, and we need a bit of replenishment again. If we don't take in energy every 3 to 4 hours, then our body tends to drop into what's called a semi-starvation zone, which has got really unpleasant side effects, including cravings, hunger, mood changes, and a preoccupation with food. Now, a little bit about diet culture here. So diet culture loves to make us believe that snacks are bad, and that if you do snack, then you must only eat sort of similar to the image on the left there, so fruit and vegetables, that sort of thing. However, that's not true. Snacks are normal and they're really important for maintaining energy levels, and a variety of snacks is best. So actually, if you want to have some crisps or some popcorn, nuts, fruit, veg, even chocolate or cake, then all of those are perfectly adequate snacks to have as your mid-morning snack.
So we've just had our snack. It's now about 11 o'clock in the morning, and imagine you are about to deliver a presentation to your colleagues. You begin to feel nervous and perhaps start experiencing tension, headaches, or shortness of breath, which is a completely normal response to a stressful situation, although it's still unpleasant nonetheless. So one exercise we can recommend when you are experiencing a heightened state of emotional arousal is the 5 senses technique. This exercise is a brief activity that you can do anywhere and anytime if you're feeling distressed and in need of being detached from the stressful situation, to relax, clear your mind and have a, oh, I think I've just skipped through half of the day, sorry. So yeah, this exercise is a brief activity you can do anywhere and anytime if you're feeling distressed and need to be detached from the situation, to relax, clear your mind and have a refreshed mind to manage the situation. The goal is to notice something you're currently experiencing through each of your senses. So as the image says, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So the number on each of these senses is only a guide, so feel free to do more or less of these. Sometimes it can be quite helpful if you are able to, if, for example, you're going on a walk at lunchtime, or even just if you're sat whilst maybe having a coffee. This could also be a good exercise to do then too, just as a grounding exercise to sort of detach yourself from the working mind that you're in. And now lunch.
So yeah, you've got through that stressful mid-morning meeting, and it's now time for lunch. So it's likely that the energy from your mid-morning snack is kind of fast depleting. So again, it's time now to get a good dose of carbohydrate and energy to keep you going. Salads like the one on the left there, the very beautiful salad, it's often seen as a healthy option for lunch. However, having sort of a low or a no carb lunch just increases the likelihood that you're going to overeat or even binge later in the day, as your body's going to be craving the energy that it's missed. So if you'd like to have a salad, maybe you want to try adding some bread or some pasta or potato or rice to give you that energy boost that your body's going to need at lunchtime. Alternatively, just have a sandwich with 2 slices of bread or a jacket potato, maybe, just whatever it takes to give your body a good dose of energy for the afternoon.
So if you've just finished your lunch, perhaps you might be feeling a bit sluggish, perhaps feeling kind of that need to nap, need to have a bit of a snooze. This is actually a normal part of the circadian rhythm, having this kind of drowsy feeling in the early afternoon, called the post-lunch dip. However, obviously in the working day, this is not quite as ideal if you've got kind of work and things to be doing. So it's best to avoid, and it's also best to avoid trying to nap during this time, as this will only then kind of have knock-on consequences in the evening, and make it more difficult for you to fall asleep that night. So instead, perhaps you could try to get active when you do begin to feel a little bit tired. So this could be, if there's the opportunity, to go out for a walk, or even something as simple as kind of going up and down the stairs a couple of times, or doing, a minute of sit-ups, a minute of press-ups, something like that.
So we're getting to around 3 or 4 p.m. now in the afternoon of your working day, and your body, guess what, is going to be ready for another dose of energy. Many people kind of think around this time, oh, I should be able to last until dinner, I shouldn't need a snack now. But again, as I mentioned earlier, sort of waiting till dinner just makes you more likely then to overeat or to binge in the evening. So yeah, it's been 3 hours sort of since your lunch, so your body is going to be asking for energy even if you're not feeling hungry. So why not take the opportunity to have a tea break with a couple of biscuits, or crackers or cake, whatever it is, to give yourself a little boost. Another thing we would recommend is having your last caffeinated drink around 3 p.m. Drinking too much caffeine during the day or having it too close to bedtime can just make it more difficult to power down and fall asleep at your desired bedtime. So perhaps you want to swap your evening coffee or tea to decaf instead.
So we've now kind of reached the end of the working day, and perhaps thinking about maybe doing some exercise. So the government recommends to do 30 minutes of exercise a day, 5 times a week, but don't worry about it kind of being too rigid or too scheduled. So, whether it's going out for a run, doing a yoga class, or even something as simple as parking your car just that little bit further away from the supermarket entrance, to get a couple of those extra steps in. So whatever the type or intensity of the activity, doing some exercise, particularly something that you enjoy at the end of the working day, could be a great way to help to take your mind out of that work mode, particularly if you're someone that's working from home. It can be really difficult to sort of differentiate that work from that home space. So going to do some exercise, just getting a little bit of fresh air could be a great way to do that. Exercise gives us a rush of these feel-good chemicals called endorphins that can really help to improve our mood. Exercise can also help to improve appetite so that you feel more ready for your next meal too. If you are opting for a more intense or vigorous form of exercise, it is recommended to do this no later than 3 hours before bedtime. This is because when you exercise, your body is put into a physical state ready for activity. Hormones are released that put your brain into a heightened state, and your heart rate, your blood pressure and your body temperature all increase. And it can take a little bit of time for your body to fall back into that relaxation mode, which is necessary for sleep. So just give yourself that sort of 3-hour window just to give your body that time to kind of cool down back into that relaxed state again.
So to round off your day, you're going to want to have dinner. Now, the best way of structuring your evening meal is to have a meal including items from each of these 4 food groups. So we've got our trusty carbohydrates, we've also got protein, fat and fruit and vegetables. Now, yeah, really important to include carbohydrates as part of this evening meal. Again, it's the body's best source of energy. And so you're going to want to make up sort of a third of your plate being carbohydrates. Think about maybe what you'd serve to a friend, if that kind of helps you think about it. But what about if you're going out for dinner? There's been lots in the news recently, hasn't there, about the new legislation around calories on menus. I don't know if you've seen that at all. And now the government guidelines recommend 2,000 calories a day for women and 2,500 for men. But remember that everybody is different and will have different requirements based on their height, their weight, their age, their activity levels. So it's best really not to try and micromanage your calories. And it's really normal actually to eat more some days rather than others. It might shock you when you're going out for dinner to sort of see the calorie content of a burger, that kind of thing. However, within the context of a regular balanced diet, a higher calorie meal here or there is not going to have any impact on your health and your weight. So as long as you're not having burgers every evening for dinner, then you're going to be absolutely fine and you can go out and enjoy that meal. Try and avoid kind of having your large evening meal within 3 hours of bedtime, as this allows time for digestion before you sleep, and it just prevents you from waking in the night or going into a lighter sleep.
Hello.
I forgot it was me again. We've also then got an evening snack.
I'm on a really amazing call. Wait, what are we doing?
I think somebody's just got their mic on. If you want to just mute yourself.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, so you've had your evening meal. If after sort of 30 minutes or maybe even a couple of hours after your evening meal, you're still feeling peckish or hungry, again, it's completely fine to have an evening snack or a dessert. It's okay to have what you fancy, whether you've got a savoury or a sweet tooth. It's best not to try and avoid sweet things totally if you like them, because again, this can encourage sort of overeating when you do have them occasionally. I just wanted to mention as well, I guess the eating structure that I've described today involves eating a meal or a snack every 3 to 4 hours, with all 3 meals including carbohydrate. And we call this the regular eating structure. Now, some people might feel that this sounds like an awful lot of food, and they might worry about the impact on their weight. However, the regular eating structure, first of all, ensures that you're eating from a variety of food groups. Because you're eating so regularly, you can eat from lots of different food groups and get your nutrition that way. It also means you're much less likely to overeat or binge because your body is getting all the energy it needs sort of nicely spaced throughout the day, which means that your body's going to use up that energy without your weight being affected. So the regular eating structure is a really helpful way of stabilizing your weight actually, and it means that your body is going to metabolize much more effectively.
So just as you would do a cool down exercise after you finish some sort of exercise that you're doing, we also recommend having a 30-minute wind down time before your desired bedtime. So this helps to serve as a cue to your body that it is time to sleep and can help to improve your sleep-1 saturation. So during this time, try to avoid using any screens, as the blue light emitted from electronic devices can reduce the natural production of a hormone called melatonin, which can subsequently delay a person from feeling sleepy. So instead, you could try reading, perhaps listening to some relaxing music or a podcast, having a bath, or doing some creative, perhaps mindful activities such as colouring. So perhaps thinking of it as in terms of that sort of that you time in the day. So you've had a busy day, whether it's sort of work or family or personally related, having that kind of dedicated half an hour you time in the day just to do some activities that you kind of really enjoy. So if you do struggle to sleep or wake up in the night feeling hungry, also relating kind of what Tabitha was saying, making sure that you're spreading your meals evenly throughout the day and possibly even having a bigger snack in the evening just to avoid then disrupting your sleep during the night if you do kind of wake up feeling hungry. And we'll now hand over to Aggie.
Hi guys, thanks for doing that. Hopefully you've picked up some helpful tips and tricks for your working day there. So now I'm going to wake you up a little bit and see who's actually listening and paying attention. We're going to do a bit of an interactive exercise. So there's a QR code on the screen. So if you can either grab your phone and scan the QR code, or I don't know if one of the girls is maybe going to put the link in the chat for us, so you can do it on your laptop. Yeah, there we go. Tabitha's done that for you. So either click the link in the chat or scan the QR code on there, and it should bring you to a screen that looks something like what's on the left-hand side of the presentation screen there. So I'll just give everyone a minute to do that. Okay, so hopefully everyone's managed to do that. If you're having any issues, do just put a message in the chat and we can see if we can try and help you. So what we're going to do then, it should hopefully come up with a box for you to write something down. Oh yeah, Sophie, do you want to just go back to the previous screen? Okay, we'll just leave it on there for a couple more minutes and make sure everyone's managed to do it. So if anyone's struggling, just go onto your camera on your smartphone and scan the little kind of black box at the bottom of the screen. It should come up with a link for you. So just whilst everyone's doing that, if everyone can start to be thinking about what research means to you. So what I'm going to ask you to do in a minute is just to think about what jumps to mind when we say the words research. So hopefully Sophie will have activated that for us now, and we can start to see what people think when they think about the word research. So generally it's kind of 1 or 2 word answers that you're allowed to put in there, but you can submit as many as you like. So if quite a few things come to mind, then put down whatever comes to mind. Just give everyone a few minutes to think about it. So as many things as you like. If you can think of more than one, feel free to put 2, 3, 4 options. Okay, looks like we've got quite a few responses there now. So what we should hopefully have now is just a diagram of the sorts of things that people think about. Okay, so knowledge is quite a big one that's come up. That's really interesting. Learning, evidence, experiments, understanding. Yeah, we've got quite a good insight there. It sounds like we've got lots of people who know what we're talking about when we think of research. I suppose the reason we've done this exercise is when we sat down to create this presentation, we were sort of thinking, what did we think research was before we worked in research? And we thought people in lab coats, you know, doing chemical experiments and that kind of thing. So I suppose we just want to start kind of broadening horizons a little bit about what else research might include. So I'm going to go through a few sort of frequently asked questions now of what is research, why do we do it? So firstly, why do we do research? So strengthening our understanding of kind of what things are, how things work, and filling in kind of gaps in our knowledge. Discovering new things and informing evidence-based decisions. So what we're kind of looking at is how things work and also what works and what doesn't work. So from the perspective of the trials that we're running, if we're trialing a new intervention, we want to know, does it work, does it not? What parts of it are helpful? What does it you know, lead to improvements in? So just kind of all of those things of understanding what things are and why they work. So the next question then, who takes part in research? So in short, anyone, absolutely anyone can take part in research of kind of some description. But what we tend to have is dependent on the research question, there will be set sort of inclusion and exclusion criteria. So what we mean by that is kind of a set of key features that help to kind of define what we call like a target population. So if you think about the kind of work that we're running here, the kind of criteria that we'd have for inclusion in our trials would be that people have to be over 18 and in employment. So we're obviously looking at employment-based research. So they're going to be quite key things in our population. If we were to ask, you know, what's the population's favourite ice cream flavour, we could ask absolutely anyone, and it would be really, really open. Whereas if you were looking at something like a rare disease, you know, you're only going to include people who have that disease in your sample. So when we flip that over and we look at exclusion criteria, an example of that might be in our sleep trials. We didn't include people who were shift workers, primarily because there was part of the intervention was having a set time for going to sleep and waking up in the morning. So if you do kind of various different shifts, that wasn't going to tell us much about how the intervention worked, just because that individual wouldn't really feasibly be able to take part. So that's the reason that we have kind of inclusion and exclusion criteria based on what it is we're trying to find out. But broadly speaking, anyone is kind of able to take part in some form of research. It will just depend on what the question being asked is. So next question then, what different types of research are there? So I always like to think of this as a bit of a pyramid. So if you think sort of when we first kind of have an idea of wouldn't it be interesting to find out a bit more about something, we might do an observational study. So what that means is going out into the field and doing perhaps a questionnaire or looking at case studies. What do we already know about this subject, or what can we find out just from asking people? So we're not at that point trying to intervene, we're just trying to say what is the state of play as it is. So these are really important studies to just fill in the gaps in kind of knowledge, strengthen our understanding of how things work and what they are. So then the next stage on the pyramid might be something like a feasibility study. So that's at the point at which we thought, okay, I've seen what this process is, I now want to have a go at doing something about it. So if we're talking about mental health, if we see from an observational study that people in the workplace suffer with stress and anxiety and depression, then we might think, let's do a feasibility study trialing a new intervention and just see if people like it, if it's kind of vaguely helpful, and if it seems like we're kind of going in the right direction. Once we've done that, if that's kind of a success, we might then go on to a randomized controlled trial. They're usually shortened to RCT. So this is kind of considered the gold standard of evidence when we're sort of looking at what is an evidence-based intervention. It basically means that you'll have a treatment group, so you're delivering your new treatment to a group of people who have that condition that you're treating. And then you'll have another group who are either receiving a different type of intervention, which might already have evidence behind it, or it might be a control group. So it might be a group of people who are on a waiting list, who will then be treated down the line. Or you might have all three of those groups, so that you can kind of compare and contrast how the effects of your kind of treatment compared to effects of other types of treatment or no treatment at all. And that's to basically see what effect your treatment has. Okay, so what are the impacts of taking part in clinical trials? So in terms of the benefits it can have, we can look at it from two different sides really. So there's the individual benefits. Obviously, if you're given kind of an intervention that is designed to improve, let's say, disordered eating, and you're struggling with disordered eating, as well as that trialing our intervention, that's also giving therapy to you for your needs. So it might be that you get an improvement in symptoms, and that can have kind of a knock-on effect in different areas of your life. So you might get kind of improved kind of work-life balance, improved overall well-being, mood, your sleep might improve, kind of social life and what you're able to go and do. There's usually quite a few kind of knock-on effects if the treatment is effective. And then on the flip side of that, we have the societal part. So that's the bit that we're thinking about when we're talking about the research. So improving our kind of knowledge and understanding, informing policy. So particularly with these trials we're running here, hopefully if we can kind of provide evidence that delivering care in the workplace is helpful, then we can inform policy that will maybe one day become kind of government guidelines. And it also helps with things like guidance for kind of best practice. So there's clinical guidelines and informs future research as well. So there's sort of two sides to it. So that's the end of our FAQs. So in terms of kind of where that leaves us and next steps, we haven't got any kind of data fully analysed yet. So we're going to do a part 2 webinar towards the end of spring, early autumn. So do keep an eye out for that on social media for that. So that will be talking about our results. So hopefully by the time we've got to there, we'll have some follow-up data and we'll know how effective these interventions have been, and we'll be able to kind of share a little bit more with you on that. So that's the end of our presentation for today. So what we're going to do now is just stop the recording, and then we will open up the floor basically for questions. So if anyone's got any questions,